Endurance training has come a long way, and we constantly refine our methods. The next big game changer will be measuring lactate in real time. The whole idea about zones will be messed up. Until then, we just gotta be patient, consistent in training, and pay attention to those little details and adapt to it. But what if there's a way to enhance your aerobic fitness beyond traditional methods? I've been testing a combination of active and passive high-altitude training and heat training. Done correctly, this approach increases blood plasma and hemoglobin mass. And we all know what that means. More oxygen transport, better performance. Let's dive in. I control through the panel the existing height in the room. It takes about 90 minutes to reach 2,500 meters above sea level for this 40 cubic meter bedroom. Now it's bedtime. In this phase, I sleep at 2,500 meters to produce more EPO in my system while I sleep. This is called sleep high, train low. Depending on the training load phase I'm in, I choose the correct height to recover well enough for the next day. This is very important to understand that quality recovery is key. If you go too high, you are not recovered enough to train at your 100% the next day. With this method, I have my individual height, not just the height of St. Moritz. This could be too low or could be too high. If I'm in a heat block, I go lower than 2,500 meters. How is it possible to simulate high altitude conditions while living at just 400 meters above sea level? The answer is a high-performance compressor system. This machine can generate an altitude up to 6,000 meters, although I typically set it from 1,800 to 3,500. Due to its noise level, about 50 decibel, the compressor is placed about 10 to 15 meters away from the sleeping area. This is the passive side of altitude training, called sleeping high. The active part of high altitude training is where things get interesting. I'm using a high altitude training mask with air from the generator and follow a protocol designed in collaboration with Dr. Grégoire Millet from the University of Lausanne. My routine alternates between low intensity, prolonged session, 30 to 60 minutes, at saturation between 87 and 78%, increasing duration each session, and long intervals, 5 to 8 minutes, target 75% saturation, with 3 to 5 minutes recovery at 90% saturation. Additionally, I double-check the height effect not only with the pulse oximeter, but also with the MOXIE, using NIRS, measuring in a relative form the amount of hemoglobin present in the muscle under the sensor. Specifically, it differentiates between the amount of hemoglobin carrying oxygen and the amount of hemoglobin that is not carrying oxygen. This structured approach maximizes adaptation and performance gains. Every morning I check my oxygen saturation using a fingertip pulse oximeter. Monitoring this metric ensures me about the stress level of my sleeping night. I don't go below 90% saturation because that would negatively impact recovery. You have to be very careful on this point. But what exactly is hemoglobin? It's the iron-rich protein in red blood cells responsible for oxygen transport. Approximately 2.4 million new erythrocytes are produced per second in human adults. The cells develop in the bone marrow and circulate for about 100 to 120 days in the body before their components are recycled. Each circulation takes about 60 seconds. Approximately 84% of the cells in a human body are the 20 to 30 trillion red blood cells. Nearly half of the blood's volume, 40 to 45%, is red blood cells. You have seen now how I train with active and passive artificial altitude. Now I would like to show you how heat training, which is also a type of altitude training, is coordinated with it. Before I go to the heat room and do my heat training, I go for 10 minutes into the hot water at about 45 degrees Celsius. This triggers especially the skin temperature to go up and make the heat training in the room more effective. This is the passive way of heat training. I use rock salt that is millions of years old and comes, in my case, from Austria. It contains elements like potassium, bromine, sulfur, magnesium, phosphorus, calcium, silicon, and lithium. I imagine it's good for me because it has a therapeutic effect, especially for my muscles and joints. The floating effect of salt water frees my mind. About 30 minutes before heat training, I turn on all 3 heat emitters, which together consume a total of 15 kilowatts to bring the room temperature to approximately 42 degrees. Through various tests, I have fine-tuned the ideal heat level for myself. It must be so intense that pushing to the maximum heart rate becomes impossible, not due to exhaustion, but because my body's internal alarm signals danger. It feels like standing in the middle of a scorching desert where every instinct tells you to stop. I drink 1 liter of water before and after training. And I mix 6 grams of Himalaya salt into the water that equals about 3 grams of sodium. I drink this 1 liter as fast as I can to learn to absorb water in the fastest way possible for competition. During the heat training, I just drink what I like. It is essential that you don't supplement vitamin B or drink beetroot juice on your heat training days. That would color your urine, because your urine must be always transparent. This is very important. The next step is heat training at about 42 degrees Celsius. I experimented with different room temperature, initially testing at 33 degrees, which felt manageable. However, at 42 degrees, my body emergency responses kicks in. This stressor produces more blood plasma than at 33 degrees. The key takeaway: plasma volume expansion is the secret to heat adaptation and later to create HBmass out of it. To track physiological responses, I use the Core app to monitor core and skin temperature. Unlike training with a Core bodysuit, ambient heat exposure triggers a much greater plasma expansion effect in my case. In the next 2 charts, I explain you why the core that you measure with your core body temperature device is not core. Core is not core. Look here. This set, this is my heart rate. I did a 5 times 8 minutes set. 265 watts. At room temperature was at 22 degrees, normal as I usually do. Body temperature went up to 38, but the skin temperature went down. So because of sweating, really cooled my body down, but still the core was high up at 38. This set doesn't produce blood plasma, doesn't adapt me for heat, even though my core body temperature is at 38. I show you now what really does produce blood plasma. Look at the temperature of the room, 48 degrees. Okay, heart rate couldn't go really higher than 125 because it's too hot. Performance really low. Core body temperature went only up to 38, doesn't go much higher, but the difference is the skin temperature. Skin temperature really took off at 36.5 degrees, and that indicated me that I'm producing plasma. That's the big difference. The results speak for themselves. This is my diagram measured by the Balgrist Hospital in Zurich, measuring hemoglobin mass, HBmass, using the carbon monoxide balls breathing method from Walter Smith and Nicole Promer. You can see on diagram 3 measurements before, after, and before. So my natural state is about 1,055 grams of hemoglobin mass equals about 13.7 grams of hemoglobin mass per kilogram body weight. With the heat training alone, with the heat training protocol, I was able to increase that to 14.1 per kilogram. My blood volume increased from 7.476 liters to 8.723 liters. And on the performance level, I gained about 5 to 6 points on the VO2 max, just through heat training, without high altitude training. In a future video, in about 6 months, when I'm through here with all the testing and training and sweating, I will show you the effects of the combination of heat training and altitude training. Experimenting with my body and sharing insights with my athletes is really what drives me. The key takeaway: stepping outside your comfort zone leads to breakthroughs. This setup that you just saw replicates in most homes, requires about an investment of about 25,000 euro, so about 2 expensive bicycles. While nothing replaces climbing in Alps, Pyrenees, or Dolomites, altitude and heat training offers a strategic advantage, especially if you train 10 to 14 hours or more per week. On a final note, be prepared for your partner's reaction. One night, my girlfriend, we were waking up in the morning and she was a little bit grumpy and the saturation probably was a little bit low. She says, "Roy, is this healthy what we are doing?" And I smiled and I said, "Absolutely, it's the best thing for you can do." So guys, thank you for joining me on my journey. If you have any questions, just write me. See you in the next video.